So, Chapter 7, the Empires of Persia. The Persian Empire is the first large-scale classical empires, including contemporary Iran and beyond, four major dynasties: the Achaemenids, the Seleucids, the Parthians, and the Sassanids. If you need an acronym to remember them all, think of ASPs. So the Achaemenid Empire, reigning from 558 to 330 BCE. They were descended from the migrations of Medes and Persians from Central Asia before 1000 BCE. So we're talking about equestrian mounted archer Indo-European Central Asian nomads. If you haven't figured it out already, Central Asian nomads are going to play a major role in history later on. Actually, not just like, well, actually now and later on. They capitalized on / cooperated with the weakening Assyrian and Babylonian empires. The dynasty was founded by a named Cyrus, who reigned from 558 to 530 BCE. The empire reached its peak under Darius, who reigned from 521 to 486 BCE, and they ruled all the way from the Indus River Valley to the Aegean Sea, with the capital in Persepolis. So, as I mentioned before, they ruled all the, their most eastern possessions included the Indus River Valley region, stretching all the way with the empire stretching all the way to Macedonia and Egypt. So we're talking about one of the largest empires in history. So how do you manage such a large empire? Well, first you divide it into 23 administrative divisions / provinces, each led by a Persian satrap, though their staff were often local. In order to make sure the satraps stay online, you would use a system of spies and surprise audits. And Darius also moved the idea from tribute to taxes, which were more regular and less ruinous. Standardized currency was introduced. Massive roads were built, and so were courier services were implemented, facilitating communication and trade within the empire. The USPS model comes from the Persian Empire. Neither snow nor rain will, something on the lines of prevent us from doing our duty. I don't know. They invented a Khanat, which was a system of underground canals to allow for irrigation. This prevented excessive loss to evaporation. So, now this brings up an interesting question. How do you maintain central control? Like, how do you fight centrifugal or feudal or entropic tendencies? Well, for the Persians, they use satrap rotation. Basically rotate the governors in and out of positions so they don't go native or build an independent power base. And you also use spies to check on them. For other empires, it was family members, eunuchs, like castrated males who you would find in China who would serve for the emperor. And due to their castrated nature, they were not beholden to anyone by family. Slave soldiers, foreigners, envoys of the Lord under Charlemagne, or taxation like the IRS. And there are many others. So the other key question is, how do you increase agricultural surpluses? For the Persians, it was khanats and other nice irrigation systems. For other empires, it's fertilization, terrace farming, champa or fast ripening rice, champa muckraft, crop rotation, iron plow, seed transportation, and many others. So changes in the Achaemenid Empire. At first, there was a policy of toleration under Cyrus and Darius, which was huge. Due to the fact that the Achaemenid Empire was so diverse, you needed to tolerate the different cultures underneath your rule to prevent, them getting mad and rebelling. It was a case of, we'll let you keep your culture as long as you, pay your taxes, follow the rules, yada, yada, yada. If you know a lot more history, just think of Akbar and Mughal India. As an example of the toleration, they allowed the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. And they tried to portray themselves as locals in Babylon in order to avoid the perception of them as foreign invaders. However, this begins to change under Xerxes, who reigned from 486 to 465 BCE, who attempts to impose a more ethnocentric stamp on the empire, focused on Persian culture, and he revokes the policy of toleration. Think of Aurangzeb in Mughal India. This, unsurprisingly, increases public discontent, which weakens the empire. Then you have on top of this, you have the Persian Wars, lasting from 500 to 479 BCE, further weakening the empire. Greeks started rebelling in Ionia, or Turkey, or Anatolia. The peninsular Greeks, basically the ones living in what we now call the country of Greece, joined them. The Persians are defeated at the Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE and are forced to retreat. Alexander the Great crushes the Achaemenid Empire in a military campaign lasting from 334 to 331 BCE. He basically did this due to better leadership and discipline, heavier arms, and plenty of luck. The next empire is the Seleucid Empire, lasting from 323 to 383 BCE. After Alexander the Great dies suddenly, his generals start divvying up the empire in a classic example of infighting, with the best part going to Seleucus, one of Alexander the Great's subordinates. He reigned from 305 to 281 BCE. He basically Hellenized or introduced Greek culture into the Middle East via Greek colonists and traders. An example of this is Buddha statues in togas, inspired by statues of Apollo. However, this empire gets attacked by rebellions in India and invasion of the Parthians. So we can see here the Achaemenid Empire and the Seleucid Empire. Now, the Seleucid Empire is smaller than the Achaemenid Empire, but however, we do see this purple route, which is the Royal Road. This, as I mentioned before, facilitated trade and communication with the empire, tying it together better. Next up is the Parthian Empire, reigning from 247 BCE to 224 CE. They were, unsurprisingly, semi-nomadic Indo-Europeans who gradually drive the Seleucids out of Iran. They had a federated governmental structure which basically lacked a central authority. They had an especially strong cavalry because they fed the horses alfalfa. They were weakened by ongoings with the Romans, however, and they felt internal rebellion. This is how empires fall, people. Foreign invasions and internal rebellions. That's how they all die. The Sasanid Empire. This one lasted a long time, from 224 to 651 CE. They claimed descent from the Achaemenids in order to legitimize their rule. They would have continual conflicts with Rome and the Byzantines, and then in the west, and then Kush in the east, not to be confused with Kush of Egypt from an earlier chapter. These wars, unsurprisingly, drained state resources and weakened the empire. They were eventually overwhelmed by an Islamic Arab conquest in 651 CE. However, Persian administration and culture were so strong that they were absorbed into the local Islamic culture. So we can see the Sasanid Empire in green and the Parthian Empire in purple. They're smaller empires, but it's still a sizable amount of territory. The Persians, being descended from Central Asian nomads, carried over their traditions of the Eurasian steppe. You would have a warrior class, a priest class, and a peasant class, with a society being heavily emphasizing family or kinship. As their empires rose, as the empire rose, you got the rise of a bureaucrat or cosmopolitan class, thanks to the absorption of Mesopotamian models. This included tax collectors, record keepers, and translators. As time went on, the slave class grew larger over time. These were prisoners of war, conquered populations, debtors, children or spouses sold into slavery. They mostly did domestic servitude, with a few doing agricultural labor or public works projects. Several acres were exceptionally fertile, allowing for large agricultural surpluses. Long-distance trade was helped from the fact that the Persians loved building roads and standardizing their coinage, which, like I said before, makes trade a heck of a lot easier. You got goods from valued goods from India, like gold, ivory, and aromatics. It's basically this is a classic case of everything from everywhere. This is what happens when it's the joy of crossroads civilizations. Early religion, similar to the Aryans, which isn't surprising considering the fact they are cousins. They had a war gods along with many, many other deities. They had a Brahmin-like priestly class, and used hallucinogenic drugs in their rituals. And neither rise of Zoroastrianism. It was founded by a man named Zarathustra, who we really don't know when he lived, but let's just say for the sake of now, for just now, late 7th to early 6th century BCE. Like the later Buddha, he was an aristocrat who just got sick of the mechanical nature of the sacrifices and rituals, so he left home and had a vision. This was an example of proto-monotheism, with the people being partners of a supreme deity named Ahura Mazda in a fight against evil, Anagra Mainu. There's a sacred scripture known as the Avesta, which included the Gathas, and this religion was encouraged by the Achaemenids and the Sasanians to legitimize their rule. Zoroastrianism would profoundly influence Judaism, Christianity, and Islam from these ideas. One, the concept of a one omnipotent beneficent deity that is responsible for all of creation, Judgment Day with hell and heaven and Satan, a strong ethical focus, though Zoroastrianism did actually encourage material possessions. And you had priests, in this case known as magi, who if you know a bit of Christian little bit of Christian stories, you've heard the story of the three magi coming to Jesus bearing gifts. Zoroastrianism would experience up and down forces depending on the times and the rulers. Under Alexander, it kind of sucked. It really sucked. Magi were massacred and temples were destroyed. The Parthians really were like, we're not going to support you. And you had a major revival in the Sassanids, obviously to legitimize the rule. It was so strong that the Sassanids began persecuting non-Zoroastrians. Then you had discrimination under Islam because the Muslims, despite the similarities between the two religions, still found that Zoroastrianism incompatible with Islam. The Zoroastrians fled to India, where they are now called Parsis. They did have major economic success with Tata founding the company called Tata of India, which is now the biggest private employer in the United Kingdom. And Freddie Mercury was a follower of his religion. So that's it for now. Hopefully that was helpful to you.